Gordon Reid, we're here in your new office. It's Spartan. How does it feel to at last get your feet under the desk?
Yeah, look, it feels fantastic, and we really hit the ground running. We've been out making sure that we're phone banking and interacting with the constituents, making sure we're hearing their issues, and we're now happy that we've got a place for the community to come and have a chat with our staff and myself if needed.
So, just for the record, where is it?
Where is it?
Yeah.
So we're on the Central Coast Highway. We're at level 369 Central Coast Highway, West Gosford, just off the main drag there. And I'd reiterate that people are always welcome in the office, and we'll endeavour to assist in the issues that they might have.
And what's it like, really? I mean, you've been used to the last few years being in an emergency room, I understand, at our local hospitals. Frantic situation you've been in here now. Are there any similarities? How does it feel?
I think the major similarity is that it's a people job. You know, people come to you with an issue, and you have to find a solution to that issue, and that's not dissimilar to working in a medical environment. Someone comes in with an illness or a problem, and you have to find a solution to that problem, and that's where the similarities lie. And that experience that I have in the medical field with that, I can bring into this new job.
So triaging, as it were.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Have you got any challenges that have come across the desk already? Are you picking up some issues that really are something that you're looking at doing?
Yeah, look, one of the big things is, one, a lot of people didn't know where the electorate office was and what services the electorate office can offer people, particularly with representations to ministerial departments, etc. So we're really getting on the phone, making sure people know where we are and know that we're available to help them.
During the election campaign, you and the team had a rather large swing to you. It's a big change. It's the first time in 9 years that the Labor Party's held this particular seat. In your words, what are your priorities now moving forward as far as implementing some of the policy promises that you discussed at the election?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'd break that into three categories. The first one is rebuilding trust with elected representatives, and one of the big things that I'd like the team and myself and our office to do is to make sure that we're always out, always accessible to people. So we're going to be starting mobile offices moving through the community in every suburb, and bringing electorate support services to people rather than people having to come to us. And just rebuilding that trust and that communication with the community. That's the first step. The second step and the third step revolves around our local commitments and our national commitments and our national priorities. And it's going to be working closely with my ministerial colleagues and colleagues in the Parliament, and making sure that we're still listening to people and getting those issues on the ground up to where they need to go in Parliament House in Canberra, and really advocating for the community. This
week we're in the middle of a state budget. The New South Wales government's handed down its state budget. The opposition has given its reply. The opposition, your side of politics, pointed out homelessness as a big challenge for the Central Coast. We were there when Mr Albanese announced the home equity scheme. Is this one of the things that you think the Central Coast people will be looking at?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Housing and homelessness is a major issue, and it's been a major issue for a long time. Jason Clare, when he was the Shadow Minister for Housing and Homelessness, pointed out that there's never been more homeless Australians. There's people finding it extremely difficult to get into stable accommodation and crisis accommodation. And our suite of housing policies, we feel will start to rectify years of neglect in the housing space. So our Housing Australia Future Fund for social and affordable housing, our First Home Buyers Regional Support Scheme, and also our shared equity scheme. I think that suite of policies, is where we need to start, because there's just been no or barely any federal investment in the housing space, and we need to get cracking in that area, particularly here on the coast.
Yeah, we hear a lot about it at the newspapers as a major issue. Apparently, according to the local state members, there's 3,000 to 5,000 people on waiting lists for social housing. But moving on to other things, more business things, the world's changed post-COVID. The NBN has been we've been told, has been a very important bit of infrastructure to maintain work and productivity.
Absolutely.
During the election campaign, you had Michelle Rowland, the now Minister for Communications, come up and promised that she'd revisit the the fibre optic network.
Yeah.
Is that also something you'll be pushing for the coast?
Yeah, absolutely. So businesses and homes alike need a 21st century infrastructure to keep up with the demands of working from home, business operations in this fast-paced environment and economy. The Central Coast is a growing region for both people moving into the area and also for our business community. And I'll be working closely with Michelle Rowland, the new Minister for Communications, to make sure that we deliver on our commitment, our NBN commitments.
I'm sure that will be very welcome to many of the people around the area. On to a bit of a past thing, the oil and gas licence off the coast here, the so-called PEP 11.
Yes.
The proponent has told us in an interview that he intends to challenge the decision that was made by the Prime Minister in the federal court. And I asked Emma McBride this thing: are you resolute in still opposing that particular proposal off the coast?
Yeah, look, absolutely. The Albanese Labor government and myself, our opinion and our stance on this issue hasn't changed. But the issue is before the court, and we need to let that run its course.
All right. Well, I'm sure there'll be more of that later. Now, on to education. Education. You're purely, almost entirely educated here on the coast and with the Newcastle University. What do you think the education sector on the Central Coast needs to bring our tertiary rates of education and up here on the coast? Yeah,
look, absolutely. So you're right. I did my primary and secondary schooling here on the coast. Did my medical degree through the University of Newcastle. A brief time in the Callaghan campus, and then was lucky enough to do my senior medical student placements at Gosford and Wyong hospitals. So yes, I've been mostly educated here on the Central Coast.
So you're a product of what many families would very much like to see.
Yeah.
However, we do have low tertiary attainment rates on the Central Coast. How do you think your government's suite of policies might help that?
So look, I think it's going to be working with the sector, and working with the community to address that issue, and making sure that people have the access and the opportunity to tertiary education. And so that they can benefit from some of the opportunities that I was fortunate enough to have.
The state government this week and the Premier announced $18 million to help refurbish another University of Newcastle campus in Man Street in Gosford. Do you support that initiative?
Yeah, look, I think any investment into tertiary education or education in general is a good idea. I think that over the last decade, there has been significant attacks on education from the then coalition government, particularly in the tertiary education space. So it is welcome to see some investment in that area.
A couple of other things that were on the election campaign: the big battery that you announced that you're looking at having a big battery both in the two electorates on the Central Coast to help with power spikes and prices. Are they still going ahead?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So we'll be working quite closely with local government and our parliamentary colleagues in the federal parliament to make sure that we work towards that commitment. The community batteries, as you probably know, are part of the largest suite of the Powering Australia plan. So it's all about rewiring the nation, rewiring our existing electricity grids to improve energy transfer and transmission. It's investing in renewable energy infrastructure, decreasing our reliance on other fossil fuels. And then our emission reduction target, which was signed last week, I think it was. And then the ancillary projects around that, so making electric vehicles cheaper, and then the community batteries. So it's 400 across the country, and the Central Coast is going to be getting some of those. And we were very proud of that announcement that Chris Bowen made during the election campaign.
Look, petrol prices and diesel prices in particular are very high. We have a sort of a holiday on some of the tax on these things that are due to come back in September. It's really hurting local businesses and families. What do you think you can do in the electric space to reduce the cost of transport, private transport?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So as I was saying, part of our Powering Australia plan was to make electric vehicles cheaper. We need to make sure that we are investing heavily in that space. The world is moving on in terms of renewable energy, and we need to make sure that we're seizing those opportunities. And part of that is making electric vehicles cheaper. With regards to petrol prices and I suppose more broader, the cost of living pressures have been hurting families now for a long time, particularly under the last 10 years when the coalition was in power. And what an Albanese Labor government wants to do is to make sure that it's reducing pressures on cost of living right across the board. So, looking and making sure that we're getting wages moving again. Looking at making childcare cheaper, making sure we're reducing electricity prices, making sure that we're just taking those pressures off working families, off families in general, right across the Central Coast, to make sure that they are able to pay their bills and just really take the pressure off cost of living.
Well, the Central Coast is also made up of a lot of families that rely on their small businesses or contractors, tradies, cafe owners, all sorts of people. What sort of initiatives do you think that the incoming government will look at to support those families?
Yeah, absolutely. So small businesses are the backbone of our local economy. They employ the most people. And one of the big things that we found during the campaign, small businesses were crying out for staff, particularly trained staff. And one of the Labor government's initiatives in that space is our TAFE and our university policies, particularly surrounding the 465,000 fee-free TAFE positions and the 22,000 additional Commonwealth supported positions for areas of need and national priority. That's one of the ways that the federal government can help our business owners here on the coast by ensuring that we have a long-term supply of staff, a well-trained workforce that we can provide to the business community. We need to make sure that we are supporting the business community, giving them certainty, particularly in times of crisis, pandemics, natural disasters, bushfires, floods, what have you. So we need to make sure that we have rigorous and well-structured support for small business, along with making sure that they have access to a workforce.
All right. Is there any other areas that in the election campaign that you'd like to bring to the fore?
Yeah, look, healthcare was one of the biggest things that people brought up during the election campaign. Price of medications and access to medical staff were two of the biggest issues, and an Albanese Labor government has plans for both of those things. So decreasing the price of PBS listed medications was one. That was one of the biggest, one of the reasons people were presenting to our emergency departments, because they couldn't afford their medications. So it's good to see that there's going to be some investment in that space. The other issue was access to medical personnel, medical staff, medical services. And the way that we're going to address that issue is, one, by making the entire Central Coast what's called a DPA, a distribution priority area. What that change in the system is, it allows the pool of doctors that can be recruited to come to the region. It expands that. We've also got our Medicare urgent care clinics that will be in discussion with Mark Butler, the Minister for Health, and the local health district. A bulk bill clinic for adults and kids with extended operating hours, designed to take pressure off the GPs and the emergency departments.
So let's get that. That's a big announcement. So we understand that you're committed to two of those on the Central Coast.
Yes, that's right.
So the idea of those is to keep people out of the emergency departments, the departments you used to work in.
Yeah, exactly. So think of it as a middle tier treatment space. So you've got emergency for your emergencies, your acute, your critical medicine. And then you've got your GPs for your primary care and your prevention. The urgent care centre sits in the middle. In places like the UK, the US, they do have an urgent care model of care in the middle between the ED and the GP.
So this is for example, someone on the football field may have torn a ligament or something like that.
Yeah, things like that. So sprains, simple fractures that require a plaster but not surgery. If you need sutures, so stitches for a wound care, basic ocular emergencies, ear emergencies, things like that. So things that, you might be too sick for the GP, but not sick enough for the emergency department. And that's what they're designed to do.
Now, I'll circle back now. It's to do with homelessness now. There's the Central Coast Primary Care has a service we understand that's called HOTS, the homeless and off the street vans that drive around. I know they've been lobbying you to maintain the funding to that or to get fresh funding for that particular service. Can you tell us, you've had a chat with them, how that's progressing?
Yeah, look, absolutely. The Health on the Streets van and services are an incredible service that's offered here on the Central Coast, and they do help many people, particularly in the homeless space, improve their access to health services. What I've been doing is having meetings with CCPC, Central Coast Primary Care, and the HOTS team, and they've stated their case. And what's happened now is that has now moved to the Minister of Health. So Mark Butler, he's been briefed on this issue and on the HOTS service. So it's currently sitting with the Health Minister at the moment, and I can assure people that I'm on the phone daily to the Minister's office and having discussions about this issue.
We noticed that the HOTS team managed to get an election commitment out of the former member, Lucy Wicks here. Did you guys make a similar commitment in that regard?
Like I said, so the coalition made a commitment at that point, but we're working now with the CCPC and with the Minister for Health about the issue and the funding issues that HOTS has at the moment.
All right. Well, thanks for speaking with Central Coast Newspapers. Once again, congratulations, and hope to see some more artwork. Local artwork hanging out next time we're here.
Maybe a plant,
Yes,
a plant or
right.
two. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. No,
Thanks, Gordon.
thanks for coming.